Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome into the 143. This is episode 214. We're coming at you live. Nick, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Got our first off-season episode of the season, keeping it in the NFL for now, talking about some head coaching changes and just what we're seeing so far culturally from these programs, what to expect, but we're bringing it all to you.
Yeah, a lot of coaching changes happened during the playoffs, and so we didn't want to take away from the coverage there to talk about them. But now that the season's over, there are a lot of new names and a lot of new places that would be hard to just skip over. Got to talk about them, and a couple of names that have been in certain places forever are no longer there. So just got to talk about every single one of them and give you the lowdown on what's going on with the coaching carousel in the NFL. We'll begin with the stat of the week, brought to you by our sponsor, Andrews Logistics. There were 21 offensive coordinator changes. 21 out of the 32 teams either lost their coordinator due to a promotion or another hire or fired their coordinator this year. And that was a record-breaking stat for the NFL this year. Is nowhere near that many offensive coordinators have been changed ever before. Kind of shows you the focus right now in football is on the offense, as the offensive coordinator position is very important in terms of the play calling, and then a lot of them are going on to be head coaches as well. And so football, very offensively focused right now because offensive coordinators are changing like nobody's business.
Yeah, I guess it's the goal is to focus right now, but player of the week, we changed it to coach of the week just because keeping it on theme of head coaches. Shout out to the coach of the year, Mike Vrabel. That's who, he took the Patriots from 3-14, flipped them in one season to 14-3, took them to a Super Bowl. Obviously, what they did there is what they did, unfortunately. Shrunk in the moment, but, you can't deny the fact that he came in and flipped the program on a dime. So we're hopeful to see what he can do in the future, but, we'll see what happens with Mike Vrabel. But he's your coach of the week.
Yep. Congrats to Mike, and I'm sure they'll have another decent season next season. We're going to move on. So we're just going to go down and talk about, there were 10 head coaching changes, 10 head coaching hires. So 10 new faces at the head coaching position this year in the NFL. And we're going to talk about each one. So we'll kick it off with the latest one. The Vegas Raiders hired Clint Kubiak from the Seattle Seahawks, their offensive coordinator. As soon as the Super Bowl is over, he announced that he's going to be the head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. Not really much to say about this one. We don't know much about Clint as a head coach. We do know that the Raiders are awful and will need a ton of changes to be made to the team. I don't see them being good for a while, but I could be wrong. I don't know how much Clint Kubiak's going to change anything about the Raiders right now. They've just been a dumpster fire for a while.
That's just a tough team to go into just because they're just a black hole of talent, if you will. It doesn't really matter how good XYZ players are. That's just where it's kind of a Cleveland Brown situation. It's where people go to die, They
do have the number one pick.
Ever. They always get high draft picks and they never pan out. People are saying Fernando Mendoza for that pick. Who knows? Clint Kubiak could be the greatest head coach in the world, but, we'll never know because he's going to be with the Raiders. So that's kind of an unfortunate place to go for him. But, you can't make it any worse is the good thing.
Nope, you can't.
The only way you can go is up because it is physically impossible to make it worse.
That is the truth. Moving on. Pittsburgh Steelers, we mentioned this when this happened. They Mike Tomlin stepped down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers after 19 seasons of coaching. So pretty big shoes to fill in terms of just the name and the respect that Tomlin had while he was in Pittsburgh. Not big shoes to fill if you're talking playoff wins and stuff. But big Mike McCarthy was hired to be the Pittsburgh Steelers' new head coach, and he's tearing up talking about his press conference. He's Pittsburgh through and through. He's ready to put the Steelers colors back on. I like Mike McCarthy. I think, as a guy, I don't know how he's going to be as a coach. It could just be Mike Tomlin 2.0 at this point, because I think Mike McCarthy is a great regular season head coach. I don't know. We didn't see it as Cowboys fans in the playoffs, but that's who they hired. Pittsburgh native Mike McCarthy.
No, I mean, he just was not – he didn't seem to be that much of a leader when he was here in Dallas. Not really changing the culture, did not seem like a very vocal guy. And this is kind of a program that I think is should be doing, kind of moving in a new direction, because it's been Mike Tomlin for so long, and now he steps down and it's somebody else. Aaron Rodgers, is he? I mean, what's going on there?
Every offseason, we do it every offseason.
We don't know what's going on. There's going to be some story that comes out about him about not wanting to play or wanting to play.
I'm sure he'll come back. I think he'll come back with Mike McCarthy.
Could there be some bad blood there? I mean, who knows? But I don't see them doing anything in the playoffs, just because we haven't seen Mike McCarthy do it. That we as Cowboys fans firsthand saw his capabilities in the playoffs, and it's next to none. Poor game management, poor clock management when it comes down to the end of games. So, we'll see.
I think one of the worst head coaching hires is this next one. Todd Monken, hired by the Cleveland Browns. The Browns just don't know how to get it right. Jim Schwartz, their defensive coordinator, really wanted this head coaching job, and the defense has been the only redeeming quality of the Browns for a while. You would think you would put that guy in, but instead you hire an old Todd Monken, offensive coordinator for the Ravens, and because of that, Jim Schwartz has now quit as defensive coordinator of the Browns. So with hiring a head coach, the Browns have actually gotten worse because they lost their redeeming quality of the leader of their defense. So this was something else from the Browns. Just when you thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous, it does that one.
That was one of those situations where you didn't think you could make it worse, but they somehow did. I mean, there's not a lot to say there. It doesn't really matter the pieces that they have, just because management and ownership is so bad that, you see with this head coaching hire, they essentially lit on fire they're starting over is what they're doing, and they don't have anything to build on. Just the Browns have never been good. They never will be good. It doesn't matter who they draft. It doesn't matter who they hire. Their head coaching, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator positions, they only have ever had a good defense, and now their defensive coordinator's gone. So, don't expect anything from the Browns. They've never been good. They never will be good.
Buffalo Bills promote Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, to head coach after they fired Sean McDermott. This doesn't normally work when you promote your offensive coordinator to head coach and you fire the head coach who's honestly been pretty successful the time he's been in Buffalo. Him and Josh Allen really flipped the team around. And so I don't know if I really like them firing Sean McDermott. I understand. I guess something had to change at this point with no success. But I don't know if a lot of their losses were Sean McDermott's fault. But time will tell with this Joe Brady hire. We'll see, because the offense isn't going to change, so it's going to be important who he gets on defense, and I guess we'll see about this one.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting one. I think it would have been cool to see a John Harbaugh maybe fit into that situation.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be cool to see him and Josh Allen together. But obviously, he got hired before that job became available, so there was no possibility of that happening. But I don't know if you can necessarily blame Sean McDermott for their woes in the playoffs over the past few years. But, it's kind of like you were saying, where they've been the same for so long that you had to change something, and so I'm guessing they're hoping that firing the head coach would kind of light a fire and change the course for this team. But we're gonna have to see. I guess the good thing you have to think about is that the scheme offensively is not going to change.
Yep.
So with Joe Brady moving from offensive coordinator to head coach, everything offensively is going to stay the same. But only time is going to tell with this one.
The Arizona Cardinals, we'll just kind of briefly talk. Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, out of Green Bay. Arizona's hiring Mike LaFleur. I think he was coming out of L.A., and he's their head coach. Arizona, they're just interesting as all get out. They stink every year too. I don't know how much this one's going to help or hurt them. I don't know much about Mike. This is an only time will tell as well.
Yeah, don't know really anything about this guy, so I don't really have that much to say about him. We'll just
good luck. One that I really like, one of the head coaching hires, I thought the Titans nailed it with Robert Saleh as their head coach. Robert Saleh was the Jets head coach for a little bit, but nothing ever works in New York for the Jets, and so he got fired. Did a great job in San Francisco as their defensive coordinator, and now he's at Tennessee. And then he got Brian Dable hired as his offensive coordinator. So together, those two are going to run defense and offense, and I really like that hire. I like both of those hires for Tennessee.
Tennessee, I think that coaching tandem between them two could help. Obviously, you look at the New York Jets, or you look at Robert Saleh's history, and you say maybe he hasn't worked out as a head coach, but that could just be a byproduct of him being in New York. I mean, he was solid as the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. So, I mean, it could be,
Yeah.
You don't really know with that one. Just because, I mean, Tennessee, they have some young talent there, but they've kind of got a ways to go. But, I mean, I don't hate that hire. I mean, I think he's a good culture guy. And then hiring Brian Daboll, I think that's a good move. But, we'll have to see with that one.
And then Miami hired Jeff Hafley out of Green Bay. I think that one was pretty solid. Jeff Hafley has a lot of respect around the league, I think. Defensive coordinator for the Packers. And so, Miami needs a complete culture change. He hopefully will provide that for them. We'll see. They've got a situation. They've got to figure out what to do with their quarterback, Tua, and they just released a couple of big names in Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill off their team to clear cap space. So Miami, I don't know if they're going to be good next year, but they could be trending in the right direction with this hire.
I was going to say, from the looks of it, they're pretty much trying to start over, scrap everything out of the old playbook, and bring in some new blood. So this could be one of those things where we don't see the success this season. It might take a year or two for them to kind of build on something, but I don't think it's a bad hire. We'll just have to see how it plays out for them.
And then the Baltimore Ravens hired Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator, as their new head coach. John Harbaugh, who was there for 19 years, 18 years, something like that, he got fired, and so Jesse Minter has now been hired as the Ravens head coach. I don't know much about this one. I know the Chargers defense always seemed to be good. So, it's tough when you lose your head coach that you've had for that long. It's going to be a complete culture shift and change in the building. So we'll just see how the players and the leaders kind of how they do with this. I don't know much about this certain hire.
You don't know a ton about him either. Obviously, this kind of a gut punch, I would say, for the Ravens, just because you've been riding it out with John Harbaugh for so long that you don't really know what it's like to have to struggle with a head coach. So we'll see how this guy pans out. Don't know too much about him, but they were looking for a change, maybe somebody to pin all the blame on for the last couple of years. But we'll see who this guy ends up being.
Yeah, and then John Harbaugh, the guy that got fired in Baltimore, he is now the head coach of the New York Giants. You know, he'll be with Jackson Dart now, Cam Scattaboo. They've got some weapons on offense. The Giants have needed a culture shock for a while. I think John Harbaugh will bring that for them. How good they're going to be, no idea. Hopefully they're awful, but I have a feeling they'll be better than we're used to them being as Cowboys fans. It might not be as easy to beat the Giants anymore with John Harbaugh over there, but we will see.
I mean, they got Malik Neighbors, and then this year they added Jackson Dart and Cam Scattaboo, and both of those guys, obviously Cam we saw for a limited period just because of injury, but that looks like a dynamic bunch offensively over there. They've got a lot of raw talent, I think, defensively and offensively. They just need somebody to kind of, I guess, rein in everyone's skills and be able to mesh it all together. We'll see if John Harbaugh can be that guy. I think the Giants could be maybe not a dominant force, but I think they could be a competitive team next year if John Harbaugh can coach them in the right direction. Obviously, like you said, as Cowboys fans, we hope they stink, but that just doesn't seem to be the way it looks like it's trending for them. I do see them possibly being somewhat threatening, but, it's just, can John Harbaugh bring everyone together? We'll see.
And then the Atlanta Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski. I don't really know about this hire. He was not very good in Cleveland. Their offense was never very good, so except for with Baker. But other than that, I don't really know about this hire from Atlanta.
Obviously did not quite work out with Raheem Morris last year. Don't really know with the Falcons. Obviously, they've got one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah.
I guess you could say best running back in the league, maybe Bijan Robinson. The quarterback position has been a question mark in the past. Don't think Kevin Stefanski is the guy to come in and change the culture and, bring life to the Atlanta Falcons locker room. I mean, even though Cleveland is a black hole, their offense was never really good, and the only time it ever was good was with Baker, but then the second he left, they went right back to stinking. Yeah. So I don't see this as being a good hire. Falcons have been kind of on the struggle bus for the last decade, almost, you could say, I guess. Maybe not quite last decade, but I don't see Kevin Stefanski being the guy. But the good thing for him is that he is in a horrible division, so it is not going to take a lot to win the NFC South. So
that is true. That is true, but those are all 10 head coaching hires. Going to see a lot of different teams, different schemes than we're used to seeing. But yeah, we'll see. Everybody's got some new faces this year, and a lot of offensive coordinators changing around as well. So yeah, we will just have to see.
Yep. But anyways, here's like to end our shows on Under Review. Brought to you a quote from the Lou Holtz, and he said, "Your talent determines what you can do. Your motivation determines how much you're willing to do, and then your attitude determines how well you do it."
Ain't that the truth? Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week with another episode of Under Review.